Welcome to Diversity Conversations, where we engage in thought-provoking dialogue to identify leadership solutions to today's most challenging conflicts. Streamed live each week, Saturday 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. Hosted by Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategist and CEOs Eric Ellis and Tommy Lewis. Join us and add your voice to this engaging diversity conversation.
Good morning, Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, the United States, and the world. My name is Eric Ellis, and I'm the President and CEO of Integrity Development Corporation, and I'm joined this morning by my good friend and brother,
Tommy Lewis, President and CEO of Make It Plain Consulting. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Tommy. How are you, my friend?
Hey, doing well, Eric. Doing fantastic. It's been a great week, Eric. We're ahead of the curve on a number of initiatives, man. And usually it's the last seconds, last minutes that we're trying to get things done. And so it feels great to be a few days, if not a whole week, ahead of schedule with submitting bids and things like that. But other than that, life is good. It's a nice Saturday morning here in Southwest Ohio. And, maybe mid 50s. It's supposed to get into the mid 60s, hopefully.
Okay.
But looking for a great weekend.
Okay. Outstanding, man. You know, I'm still here in Savannah, Georgia. And so I came here because SHRM has its National International Inclusion Conference. It was sold out this year, Tommy. And I was just grateful to be able to be a part of this event. I delivered a session on the 7 proven methods for overcoming DEI opposition, had overwhelmingly positive response from the audience. We had standing room only. That's a first for me here. And there were people that were just hungry for a positive message around how do we navigate these times. Judy also had a chance to do a presentation as well. I decided to stay the entire week, Tommy. I just, I've got a good friend that's here in Savannah. I'll talk about that in just a minute. But Judy had a death in her family, so she did her session, and then she went on to Atlanta. One of her favorite cousins, my favorite cousin of hers as well, a poet, passed on, and so she's there.
Yeah, Eric, thanks for sharing again. My condolences, prayers, and well wishes for those who are, i.e. survivors, who are maybe in mourning the loss of a loved one. And thank you. And Judy is fantastic, man. I remember having the opportunity to work with her in another capacity when she was at the University of Cincinnati. And she invited me in to speak to her class on a number of occasions. And she had complete control over her class, whereby they were, insightful, they were inquisitive. And I believe, and I don't know this for a fact, but she set the groundwork and the foundation to have open conversations. So when I came, and like any other guest speakers, when I showed up in her class, they were ready to have the conversation, right?
Okay.
And I was like, wow, this is, I wasn't pulling teeth or having to entertain. We just got right into the work. And that's what I enjoy most about having guest speakers and our guests and showing up where we're welcomed, in addition to those challenging moments. But it's easy when it's easy, and it's just some extra work when it's difficult. So congratulations to you.
Thank you for that. I also, while I was here, I had to do a virtual session with the FDA. And so I had over 1,000 participants that joined me virtually. And I had one of them just call me and say, I want to be like you, this is the work that you do is the work that I want to do. Can we meet to talk about that? And I said, yes. And really just had a great conversation with this person. And what I said to him, Tommy, was, if this is what you want to do, this is what you can do it. That there is no sort of, perfect pathway that you have to go through. You just have to care deeply about this work and be, committed to being a lifelong learner. And you just sort of, get on the bike. And so I like encouraging people, man. The other thing that I did is I decided to stay down here because I've got a good friend Chris Pittman, who's a pastor here. We grew up playing ball. He's in the Goins family. And
Okay.
so, so I was so excited that I would see him when I came here. And he told me a story, Tommy, that I want to share just before we bring our guest on. He was telling me about being a young pastor in Cassopolis, there around Michigan, Elkhart, Indiana, Michigan. And he said that he was trying to build a church. He went to the bank and they loaned him, sort of gave him a $70,000 loan. He said, Eric, you can't even build a house or nothing with that. And I'm trying to build a church. And he talked about all of the church members that because they believed in what he was doing, people were giving him contributions of 5,000. Somebody gave him 10,000. Just, people in his church. And then they started doing that from around the country. And then he said that a man came to him that ultimately he discovered was a racist and said that I want to help you build your church. Me and my sons, we have a construction company. He said the man came in and he was ill. And he started building stairwells and classrooms. And he said the man became so ill that he was moving around on his forearms, Tommy, in there working every day, carrying himself up and down the steps on his forearms. And he said when the man finished the work that he was contributing, he went to the hospital and he was really on his deathbed and asked him to bring the praise team into the hospital. So Chris said, he was like, what? Bring the praise? So he took the praise team. This man's family was like, who are all these Black people? So they left the room and they were in there worshiping with this man. And he literally just reached up like to God and died just like that. He said, then another man came, a homeless man came and said, I'm a former master builder. If you'll let me stay in the church, I'll build out your sanctuary. So he said, well, okay, and the man was living in the church. He said they had this big, ugly beam that was in the middle of the sanctuary, and the man built this amazing cross around that. He said the man had wood from Africa and all over the world and made this spectacular cross, built out the sanctuary and everything. It was so beautiful. He said, he told the man, we've got to pay you. And the man said, no, I don't need anything. And he said, no, we got to pay you. I mean, you did such a masterful job. The man said, well, just send it to this address. I'm leaving now. And he said he sent about $15,000 to the address and then called to make sure it got there. And the woman said, there's nobody here with that name. She said, I just know that the check that you sent was exactly what I needed. My house was in foreclosure, and that check paid off my house.
Come on, Eric.
It was like an angel had come. The woman had never heard of the man, and the man just gave him a name of a person who needed that money. Man, I cried so bad just listening to that, Tommy, because it just made so clear the power of God. That the bank, he said the bankers were kind of laughing at him, like $70,000, he's not gonna be able to do anything with that. And God took that 70 and added things from everywhere. And so I was just so grateful. And I haven't seen Chris in a long time. So grateful for his maturity in his pastoral leadership. And grateful, man, that he's in that space. So this has really been a blessing. We had a chance to golf yesterday, Tommy. We golfed pretty good, and we're going to get out there again today.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yesterday, I posted Grateful and Thankful Fridays. And so I recognized some of our clients, Eric, and as I was listening to your story, I too am grateful and thankful. And we never know where our blessings are coming from, the why. Some of us have had our individual or maybe even collective struggles and challenges, and we get to a point that we realize that, with our faith that we have and that the things that we've done in the past may not, sometimes it's been a burden on our psyche and in our spirit. And so the gentleman that asked the praise team to come, he had got to that place. The gentleman who just needed a place to shelter in that had a particular skill set that was a gift and a blessing that he believed in this case that he would not be rewarded. He would not accept any reward, a monetary reward, but then gift it to someone just kind of arbitrarily, but knowing that they had this need. It is God is good. This work is ever going, everlasting. And we are, I think, Eric, I know that our guest is, and others in our community, we are blessings to people beyond our thoughts and or control. Right. And I take that seriously. I'm not doing things, or you don't do things intentionally to say, I'm a blessing to you. That's not what we do. Right.
No.
We live in the moment. We know the blessings we received, and we simply say there is still need in the world. Right. As I close, and we'll bring on our guests, I remember early on in our podcast, then it was a radio show. Eric, you used to always say, and this is all recorded. So you always used to say that, the world is on fire and we have buckets of water. Right?
Yes, sir.
The world is on fire.
Right.
I remember that saying, there's a lot of things going on in the world. The world is on fire. And we're having this conversation. We have these buckets of water. We just want to add value, bring support and assistance. So thank you, Eric. Thank you for your friend, and enjoy your time in Savannah, Georgia.
Right. I'll say one last thing, and then we're going to bring up our guest, which is the next generation of great leadership in the DEI space. But there are a couple of Muslims that were in my session, and they were seeking me out because they were in tears that I had mentioned what's happening in the Middle East. And I put up a post that you may be aware of that I said, basically, support the innocent, because my heart breaks every day, Tommy, as I hear about death on either side, starting on October the 7th, when Hamas came in and really killed 1,400 Israelis. But then all the bombing that has taken place by Israel in Gaza that has killed maybe over 9,000 civilians, man. And my heart is just broken. And I was talking about the ways that we try to provide support through, number one, just listening to people more than we talk, and demonstrating empathy, and seeking to learn more about the complexities of this conflict, but then in our hearts, and ultimately trying to find ways to call for peace. And this woman came up to me, and she's from the Middle East, and she said, "I thought you were speaking directly to me." And she said, even though you didn't spend a whole lot of time talking about this, she said, you were the only person throughout this whole conference that mentioned it at all. And I just want to say to you that I thank you for that. And so I'm just grateful, Tommy, for the work that we do, and grateful for our next guest that we're going to bring up, Merlin Pope III. He is the next generation. We have a shared history in terms of our backgrounds. Merlin, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. How you doing, Eric and Tommy? Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for saying yes, man. I ran into you, and I just knew that it was important for us to have you on our podcast. Tommy and I talk about this is really a record in many ways of our lives, and we get a chance to bring interesting, brilliant people to our community. And we are grateful to have you as a guest of ours. We have a shared history in our fathers working together to help start this industry. And so I want you to just kind of start off by just introducing yourself to our community, man, and start, just as a kid in a home with both of your parents were pioneers and leaders in this space.
Yes. Well, again, first and foremost, thank you again. I'm honored to be here with you all today. I was very fortunate to be raised by two parents that were really visionaries in the DEI space. They started doing this work back in the 1970s, and started in 1976. And, one of the things that's funny is, I grew up listening to them talk about the great work that they were doing with clients at the dinner table. And so naturally, when I graduated from undergrad, I thought I would just walk into the business and start doing this great work that I'd heard my parents talk about my whole life. And
right,
my mom, fortunately, she had the wisdom. She was like, "No, you're not coming into here yet. You need to go out in corporate America and learn." And at the time, if I'm honest, I felt like I was being punished. I didn't understand. But after spending 15 years in corporate America, the majority of that time in the medical device space, and then joining the company in 2018, I am so grateful that she had the foresight and wisdom to get me out in corporate America before coming into the organization. And so I've been Pope since 2018, and things are going really well. Learning a lot.
Yeah. Excellent. And that's the thing. I would say that for those people that do the best work in this space, they are ultimately lifelong learners. And I know that there's a term that I've heard women say more than I've ever heard men say, and it's the term imposter syndrome. And when I hear them say it, I always thought, that doesn't really fit. But I think that at times, all of us, because of being minorities, being diverse in this majority world, can feel that way. I have felt that way sometimes, that you're never good enough. But then when you look around and see all the people in the dominant culture that sometimes don't have any qualifications at all and they're leading things, you recognize that what we have is enough. And I was telling Tommy that I was just talking to a young man yesterday that was saying, I want to do what you do. And what I've always seen is that in my life, it seemed like people, when they did something great, they always make the mountain look higher that you had to climb. And I feel that my calling is to make the mountain look smaller. When I went to graduate school, I remember people saying, oh my goodness, graduate school, that's the toughest thing in the world. And graduate school was easier than undergraduate for me. So I said to people, it's easy, man. All you're doing is writing papers. Right. And they only give out A's and B's, and so, I was laughing like that. But also as an author, people are saying, oh, wow, nobody writes a book, man. It takes your whole lifetime, And it took me 7 months, 15 years of procrastination, but 7 months. And so I just think that, man, it is great that you're in this space. I think that your 15 years in corporate America, there's no greater experience than you can have than having had that. Because, I see, that many of the challenges that my children are dealing with are similar to the same challenges that my wife dealt with when she was a young professional come out of college.
Absolutely. There's a great quote that I love. It's I forget who said it, but it says, as your island of knowledge grows, so does the shore of ignorance. Right? As your island of knowledge grows, so does the shore of ignorance. And I feel very much like I'm living that every day and grateful for, just the constant learning that happens. Because I completely agree with you, Eric. You have to be a lifelong learner in this space. To dynamic.
What do you enjoy? Right. What do you enjoy? And Tommy, I'll let you jump right in here. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm curious too, as you were around the dinner table listening to your mother and father talk about kind of the pains and pleasures of the work. And you mentioned that, you were gravitating to the work and kind of wanting to take it on. What was it about you, based on what you heard, again, the ups and the downs of the work, that really attracted you to say, hey, I want to get into this space, not just as a check the box, maybe do it once or twice, but really jump in full force? What is it about you, and what did you hear that really attracted you to the DEI space?
Well, I think what really attracted was a couple of things. One was, when my parents started doing this work, that the primary focus around diversity work was, representation, just affirmative action and what have you. Yeah. And they really were ahead of the game in repositioning how DEI work can be leveraged in terms of leveraging diversity as a source of strength and competitive advantage. And so I was really attracted to that. And then two, being from an underrepresented group, and the medical device space is largely white male dominated. The industry is making some changes in the last 5 years or so, but when I was there, largely white male dominated. And so I understand what it means to be from an underrepresented group, trying to be successful in an environment where there are not many people that look like yourself.
Yeah.
So as you look at this work, which part of it do you enjoy doing the most? Training, sort of innovating materials, strategic solutions. What is it that you enjoy most about the work?
I would say it's the strategic solutions, really collaborating with the clients, trying to understand what are the key organizational challenges they're looking to solve, and then working hand in hand with them to develop solutions that will, identify or address the concerns that they have. And really developing solutions to help equip people with the awareness and skills to work with people that are different from themselves on a daily basis. And then setting up an environment, looking at the environment, the infrastructure, the systems, structures, processes, and practices, and making sure they're set up in a way that allows everyone to succeed. That's what that gets me excited.
How would you describe the times that we're living in? And just like you said, we absolutely want to have a conversation. So if there are any questions that you have of Tommy or myself, you can also weigh in with those. But how would you describe the times that we're living in right now? What do you see in terms of just the conflicts that are happening in this country and around the world? And what are you seeing here? And what do you think about the future of DEI?
I think that the times are certainly turbulent. We're seeing some different things happen. When George Floyd was murdered and we went through that situation, on our end, we saw several different things change, which I think was really encouraging. One of the things we saw is a lot of interest from industries in which I think weren't as engaged in this DEI work as before. So, working with more engineering, architecture, construction companies than ever before. I think that's really encouraging. Also working with more small and medium-sized businesses. The Fortune 500 space, they've been in this work for quite some time. They have whole departments, and seeing the interest from small and medium-sized organizations to really put a focus on this has been really encouraging.
Have you worked, or are you working with clients that may not know necessarily what they need, but they share what they want? In other words, there was a client that we had in Toronto, Canada, and we engaged them early on. They said, we're very, very diverse here in Toronto. So diversity, we define it differently than you do. This is in the first 5 minutes of the conversation. Right. And I was sitting there like, how do I define it? Because they told me we define it differently than you. I don't know if they were talking about me personally or Americans. They knew we were an American company. And so as we began working with them early on, they had some wants, but through our analysis, there were particular needs, right? And the needs that we saw were the barriers that were in the way for them achieving their wants. So you need to care for this right now. Your foundation is cracked.
Right.
And you want more representation, but your foundation, your process, your system is cracked. And so my question to you is, can you talk through how you and your team work with organizations in your analysis, in your processes to, kind of delineate what they might want and what you and your team sees that they need?
That's a great question. And absolutely. One of the most common things that I hear when I'm working with potential or talking with potential new clients is, we know we need to do something. We just don't know where to start. Right. And oftentimes we believe that the best place to start is a current state assessment, assessing your organization, identifying the strengths that exist, the opportunity areas, and then using that information from the current state assessment to inform your DEI strategy so you can build something that's integrated, holistic, that truly is speaking to the needs of that organization. And then I think the most important thing that you get from the current state assessment is it gives you that baseline data, right? So you can measure and validate progress over time. I think what happens often is organizations will sometimes skip that current state assessment and just jump to training. Training is great, but by itself, it's insufficient to create that long-term change. And we find that organizations that just jump to training, it's hard for them to really quantify the success that they've had or the progress that they're making. So that assessment is certainly critical to long-term and sustainable success.
How have because DEI has been under attack, especially by politicians. The number one response that I get I ask a question in almost every session that I do. I ask people, how would you rate the level of sort of support and progress, the quality of the effort that we're getting from Republicans and Democrats on behalf of us, the American people. What grade would you give Congress? And the whole crowd just yells out, F minus. I mean, people are they're unified in their recognition that we're being poorly served by our politicians. What do you think about the attacks that DEI has been under from the political wing? Does that surprise you at all? Do you see DEI coming out from under that? Do you think the language has to change? What's your view about that?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking. It's unfortunate. It certainly feels like DEI has been weaponized in a way that I don't think is productive. The conversations that I'm having, I'm trying to simplify it and bring it back to the clients that when you think about it, DEI is really about two things. It's about your infrastructure, making, again, for your systems, processes, structure, making sure they're equitable so that everyone coming to your organization, regardless of their background, has an equal opportunity to succeed and gets the things that they uniquely need in order to be successful. And then the other part of that is people, and that's equipping them with the awareness and the skill set to work with people on a daily basis, right? And that's all DEI is about. And I try to focus the conversation there. And, it's going to be quite some time until robots are running this world and doing all that. And, people are in charge of the processes and outcomes. And the better that people are able to work with each other, the better outcomes you have, the better products you have, the more efficient you will be. And so that's where I try to keep the conversation.
Excellent.
One thing Eric has shared with me a few weeks ago, and I've known Eric for multiple decades, but just a few weeks ago playing golf, where we spend a lot of time golfing and bouncing ideas against one another, having a lot of laughs. And in between the laughs, Merlin, I was expressing my frustration with a few clients whereby I was very much committed, myself, my team committed to them achieving what they said they wanted to achieve, right? Mm-hmm. And in my mind, they weren't doing it, right? Again, we had the assessment, we've laid kind of a framework to do the work, had a strategy which was about 3 years long, and it was stalling, right? Gave them all the tools that they wanted. And I was getting frustrated, like, I'm carrying a whole bunch. And Eric said, very, very Eric Ellis-like, right? So there's a lot of flavor in that. He basically said, don't care more than the client, right? And I took that to heart because me caring much more than the client would keep me up at night when they were sleeping, would keep me thinking only about DE&I for their company when they're thinking of many other things, including DE&I. And so I was just thinking too much and I was burning myself out thinking about them. And they were telling me through their action or lack of action to say, here's where we are right now. That's what they were telling me. It's like, no, right. We need to be on the moon. They was like, no, we're building the ship right now. Slow down, Tommy. I was like, come on. We've been doing this. And so Eric helped me kind of pull back to really pace myself, right? And with these particular clients, some clients are fast moving and we're right along with them. So my question to you is, personally, as the leader of your organization that has decades of experience and expertise in the DEI space, as you listen to your mother and father back in the day share their stories about clients, frustrations, and victories, and now in your role, what frustrates you about the work? Not necessarily the clients, but about the work. What is it about the work that has you saying, ooh, did I make the right choice? Right?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say one thing that's frustrating is I feel as though there are some organizations that think DEI is something that they can do for a quarter, check the box, and then move on to the next initiative. And as you all have said many times, this is a journey. It's never ending. It's ongoing and evolving. And so it can be frustrating when organizations have that mindset that they can just do it one time and then just keep it moving, and they'll get that culture change that they're seeking. The other thing that I think frustrates me is the idea that the HR leader or the DEI leader is solely responsible for creating that cultural change. And it's the whole entire leadership team. It's the middle managers. It's the individual contributors. Everybody has to take accountability for creating that change. It cannot a DEI leader is not a magician, and so they need the support of everyone to make that change possible.
Well, I'll tell you, Merlin, I love hearing about you, the professional, and your very clear thinking about this space and this work. But I want to go back. Oftentimes, we sort of talk about slowing down the picture so that people can see people's stories in a more granular way. I'd like you to go back and sort of talk a little bit more about both of your parents, who they were. I want you to just talk about your dad and maybe an impactful story that might help our community to understand who Merlin Pope Jr. was, and also your mother, who she was. What was each of their superpower as you see it? And then I'd like you to bring that down to sort of how you've drawn on both of those and how they show up in your life. We're just really interested in learning more about sort of this legacy and helping people to understand more about both your father, your mother, an impactful story that lets you see them sort of in a clearer light, and then sort of what you've taken from that.
Yeah. So, my father, as you both know, came from very humble beginnings in Middletown, Ohio, to eventually doing PhD work at Yale. And the arc of that is pretty incredible. When I think about my father's superpower, I think it was his charisma, his dynamic energy, the way he articulated messages to people, his laughter. His laughter could light up a room. And his ability just to connect with people from all different backgrounds was truly his superpower. And my mother, if I had to think of one word in terms of her superpower, it'd be her strength. My father passed away in 1998. I was 15. My younger brother Adam was 10, and so my mom, lost her best friend, her lover, her business partner. And had to keep the business alive while raising, 2 teenagers at the time. And she was able to do that. He died in 1998. I joined the company in 2018, and she shouldered the load of all of that for all those years and kept the company alive for us to have an opportunity to come into it. So I'm grateful every day for her strength and leadership to get us to that point.
Yeah, and I had great. Go ahead, Tommy.
I was just going to echo, Brother Pope. I would echo the words that you define and describe your mother. I don't know your mother terribly well. I know the work that she does, but I understand fully when a partner is lost and the work and life must continue. When that globe, if you will, is on the shoulders. I thought by watching her from afar, in between the bushes, examining, I had some interactions with her and Pope and Associates at the time to say, okay, there's a way to build a successful business model, and she is holding it up. I also know that we cannot be in multiple places at the same time. And your mother had a particular skill of her superpower in my mind was kind of separating herself, like multiplying herself, that she was showing up in places literally where I would be running. I'll be in one location, I'll see her, hey. And then I'll say, I look at my clock, my watch, and I'll run to another place and she'll be sitting there. Wait a minute. I'm serious. She would be everywhere. And I learned that, and I'll close with this. I had learned by watching her that it wasn't a matter of being at one place for the entirety of the time, right? From the beginning to the end of that time, it was really having a strategy, coming into the space, engaging with the people you want to engage with. Sometimes that's just 10 or 15 minutes. You have achieved your goal, move to the next. So then your work day, right, looks like achievement, achievement, achievement. The result is maintenance, sustainability, growth. And that's what I think her superpower is with strength, that she was able to replicate herself, right? And then have the wisdom to allow you to experience what you needed to experience. And as you're coming in and came in now in the president role, to say, to literally have the tools through skill and also through observation, that how do you kind of clone yourself, right? And at the same time, save yourself, because we can get burned out. And so I want to publicly applaud your mother, who has done a yeoman's job in this space of DE&I, and then you have not fallen far from the tree, my friend.
And I can, right, I can tell you, right, I can tell you that. So I knew your parents before I think they got married. So I've known them that long. And I've watched both your father's brilliance and your mother's brilliance in different ways. I watched as your mother was a white woman who was able to navigate this conversation about race in the 70s and 80s. I mean, that was already big. I saw your mother, though. What was interesting is that, and if your mother sees this, she'll probably just chuckle about it, is that in this group of a lot of Black men, she not only was able to navigate the conversation about race, but she also put pressure on all of them and even me as a young man around sexism and sexist behavior. And that was new. And she brought it in a way that put all of these brilliant, talk all the time, aggressive Black men. She was setting everybody on their heels. And as a young man, she was helping to shape and cultivate my worldview around what gender equity looked like. And man, I just remember some of the most dynamic conversations that I ever saw were not in the workshop classes out in corporations. Many of those best conversations were right around the office, with your mother being quietly brilliant before she ever got a master's degree or anything else. She had both knowledge and a brain that could capture knowledge, and she had street knowledge, smarts. So she had both of those that she brought to the table. And I just sat back oftentimes and watched that. It was impressive to me.
She has such a passion for this work and still does. I mean, it's contagious and inspiring that she truly loves this work, and she's done the work on herself, and in terms of recognizing her own privilege and what that means as a white woman and what have you. So, and she continues to do the work, and I'm really grateful that, I get to learn from her every day.
Right. That's a good thing. Now, one of the things that I say oftentimes, Merlin, is that people in our space believe that corporations struggle with DEI. And I'm of the mindset that they don't simply struggle with DEI, they struggle to create people-centered workplaces in general. And so it just shouldn't surprise us that if they're struggling to create people-centered workplaces, empathic workplaces in general, then it shouldn't surprise us that they don't always do a great job around DEI. What do you see, and how do you navigate the space around both sort of, preparing managers with the skills to manage people? Are you all taking advantage of that? Are you seeing that as an opportunity for you all as well? It's kind of like they're not doing anything around people-centered workplaces. So you come in there for DEI, you actually bleed over and do some other mainstream things for them as well. How are you navigating sort of that space?
Yeah, when you think about DEI, if you think about an inclusive environment, it really is about three things. It's about the connection, It's about the practices that people employ on a daily basis that feeds that connection. And then it's about development. And when I say development, I'm really speaking about the informal development and ensuring that everybody, particularly marginalized people and folks, have access to that informal development, because typically that's what's missing. I mean, I think most organizations do a good job with the formal development where people have the ability to get access to that, but it's the informal development that is so valuable and critical that oftentimes marginalized people don't have that same access to. So I think it's about addressing that. And then I think the middle manager talent segment is the most important within an organization.
Yeah.
Certainly you need buy-in from your executive leadership team, but the middle managers, they have the most touch points with the broadest amount of employees on a daily basis. And they typically have the most diversity within their teams themselves. So I think the success or failure of any initiative, but particularly anything related to DEI, is heavily dependent upon the success of that middle manager talent segment.
You know, as you were talking, I was thinking of, corporations that have executive leadership teams, be it a CEO, COO, a CFO, et cetera, all these officers who in some cases, say chief financial officer, every so often they have to continue their certifications or licensures or education. My question to you is, as the president of your organization that's been doing this work for some time, where do you go to continue your education in this space to really sharpen your blade of steel?
Great question. So constantly reading a lot, attending workshops, particularly around, the evolving gender identity space, understanding the trans space more effectively, and really challenging the people in our organization to do that same, because the things are changing and you got to stay up on it. And, I think it's heavily related to empathy. And the more you understand, the less fear you have, and the more you're able to empathize with someone's reality that may be different from your own.
Yeah,
Let me
and
ask you.
I want to real quick, Eric, just real quick.
No, go ahead.
I want to ask both of you this question as business owners and leaders in your respective companies. Again, I'm poking at both of you. What might your staff say about you? Right. Again, it could be on the positive side or the constructive side. When your staff is away from you and they interview with me, and I'll say, hey, what do you think about your boss, Mr. Pope or Mr. Ellis? What would they say about you?
Eric, you want to go first?
Yeah. So I know my staff would say that I have a big heart, that I'm loving, that I love them. They love me. They believe that the way that we approach this work is different than everybody, which is not true, but they really believe in the way that we approach this. They also know that I'm not going to give a lot of lead time. They wish that I would get on things earlier and not be last minute on so many things, And but I would say that they trust me, and that and that I'm willing to apologize when I make mistakes.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think my team would say that I am kind, loyal, honest. In terms of the constructive piece, I think they would say I have a tendency to be very outcome based, and in being so outcome based, sometimes my frustration when we're not getting to the outcome as quickly as I think we should comes into play. And what I'm working on as a leader is to try to create an environment where my frustration does not come into play, where my team doesn't see it, and learning to enjoy the process more. It's about the process, not so much the product, and trying to live in that space. And got a lot of work to do, but that's what we're working on.
We all do. Now, Tommy, you got to answer that question.
Yeah, thank you. For myself, I think my team, my staff will tell you that I am laser focused toward helping others, and my style is collaborative. My style is with perspective and introspective. they will share that I'm very loving. I love hard. I love the work. I love people. I love challenges in getting to a solution. The critique or the constructive feedback is, I can be a little bit anal retentive with those outcomes, Merlin. Man, I had a saying back in the day,
Right.
and I was checked on this a few years ago. I had a saying with my team: "Hey, listen, show me the baby. Don't talk about the pain." I'll say it all the time.
Oh,
Just show me the baby. Right? Get to the results. I'm an athlete, so the baby is winning. Don't talk about how much I have to run, how many weights I have to lift. No. Did we win or lose? We won. If we lost, get back to work so we can what? Win. And I used to say that, like, yeah, hey, show me the baby, show me the outcomes, don't tell me the pain. And then I looked around my room, and I looked around my office. I was the only man. All right. There was all women.
right.
And I'm not going to name her because she's probably listening this morning. She jumped up in the meeting. Tommy. I was like, yeah, go. I do one of those things. Go. When have you had a baby?
Yeah, right.
Well, I haven't had a baby, but I have stayed at a Holiday Inn Express. Like, that's not enough. She said there's a period of time, the work, the journey is at times even more important, right? She says in closing, so that women who birth babies, they're connecting with that child before they're introduced into the world, right? It could be through their language. It can be through the food that they eat. It can be through their energy and emotional state that is transferred into that child. And so if you really set a good, healthy, and mindful journey, right, the outcome that you expect is inevitable.
That's powerful.
Right? Yeah, isn't it? So that 9-month incubation to birth that child, I have actually used that in the DE&I space. Right before, I was like, hey, we can do this, check the box in about 3 months, 6 months. Now I go 9 to 12 months. Right, 9 months of incubation, really developing the norming, storming, forming, and all that good stuff. Really working through some mistakes. Right, changing a diet at times. Right, managing our mental wellness, and then once that project, initiative, or effort is launched officially, give it about 3 months to give another checkpoint. Right, to treat this process as if they are growing human beings that we hope that they live a prosperous life, a long and prosperous life. And so now my arc of this work is not only 9 to 12 months, but it's also looking at multiple decades. How can we have this inception in this moment to have decades of success? And this is what my team will tell you about me, because I'm very introspective. And I've had this conversation with them. They said, man, he's kind of looked so far down the path. I said, yeah, I look so far down that path that I'm not going to be there when we get there. Right? Not going to be there. So again, thank you for entertaining that question and sharing your thoughts.
Yeah, I love that. It's a great way to set the right expectations. We live in a society that's about immediate gratification, and this work takes time. And I love that arc of 9 to 12 months and even beyond that. That's great.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this as before we know it, the time is just run by, but I've got sort of 3 questions that I want you to consider here. One is, what do you see as the future of DEI? As you look at AI, and I don't know how much you all are embracing that, incorporating that into what you do. What do you see as the future of DEI? Then what questions do you have of Tommy and I? And then how can we help you? So those are the 3 ones. You can start anywhere, but I just want to give you the floor there.
Great questions. The future of DEI, this work is not going anywhere, because at the end of the day, it's about people and connection. And as long as there's people, we're going to need to connect. We want to connect with each other, and that is critical in and outside of the workplace. I think the future of DEI is going to be heavily related to how can you create internal structures for organizations to sustain this work on their own. And I think a big part of how you do that is creating change agents or inclusion coaches within organizations that are seated across the organization in a vertical and horizontal fashion. I think that will be critical. In terms of questions for you all, I'd love to know, you are GOATs. You've been in this industry for a while. What do you see as the biggest change that you've seen from when you started to where we're at now in 2023?
Yeah, that's good. That's a good question. I would say that we have made some progress. And so you see a more diverse representation across levels, not yet enough at the C-suite level. I think that we have had a lot more successes in terms of gender representation at the highest levels. But I would say to you that sexism is still as prevalent in the workplace today as it ever has been. I don't think that the Me Too movement did much to shift that, because women still see it as a major risk to raise what they're experiencing. I would say that there are more models of success. And so I think that there certainly are models of success that we see today. But I think that we still have a long way to go. I think that we've broadened the things that we do under the umbrella of DEI. I don't think that we collaborate well enough. I think that people within the industry are too fearful of one another. They're too competitive against one another. I believe that the need is so great, and those of us that do this work, claim to do this work, or fail at this work, is so small. So the number and amount of people that do this work is minuscule compared to the needs that exist out there. I don't think we spent enough time trying to talk about how we can collaborate in order to have a greater impact. I think that's going to be desperately necessary as we continue to live.
I love that abundant mindset. I completely agree. Completely agree.
Yeah, I'll answer this in two ways, one philosophically and then the other tactically. Philosophically, I actually don't think that DE&I has changed a lot. What I mean by that is there's just pendulum swings. So we can go back several decades. I'm talking about the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. There were issues around race and identity and gender identity, et cetera, tribalism. And then in the 60s, there was a push. It could be a social push. It could have been a corporate or private sector push. And then that pendulum swung into the 70s where, okay, I think we're okay now, right? We're post whatever. And then we move into the 80s and 90s, and then there's another push. And these pushes are really instigated through events. So if you look back into each decade, there are significant national and global events that spur attention around the same old thing, people, just like you said, right? So we're just struggling, we being human beings, we're struggling with understanding who we are as human beings and how do we best engage, interact, live, work, and play with other human beings. And I believe, again, philosophically, that two of the barriers is human beings, pride, and ego.
Oof.
I think that really gets in the way of us just connecting, right? Tactically, I believe, and I will echo with you, Merlin, and Eric as well. Tactically, I think that we simply need to communicate more regularly the successes that individuals and organizations are having along this journey, right? Because we do so much hard work. We being practitioners, those in the organizations, we do hard work, and we want to embed and bake DE&I in the organization's DNA. And so once it's baked in, we're just living the work. We're not acknowledging that we're alive. Again, just like human beings, we just live our lives, right? And we complain when we're sick. Organizations complain when they're sick. There's a need when we're sick. The society says, hey, whoa, there's an event, we're sick. And then we come in with the DEI doctors. right? But tactically, we just need to communicate, hey, Pope Consulting, they're doing it, right? You don't always have to go to Integrity Development or Make It Plain Consulting. Go to Pope. There are many other folks that can help you. And from Eric and my perspective, if I'll speak for me personally, if I'm working with a client and I know they have a need, I know they have a couple of wants, but they just don't like us and our style.
Right. Say it, Tommy.
I'll acquiesce, right? And I will refer.
Same here.
Yes, because it's going to be maybe a different name, right? But same message and concept, just like DE&I. We can call it diversity. We can call it equity. We can call it inclusion, belonging, accessibility. All of those terms are still the same concept. People connecting. I love what you said, Merlin. I love it. I'm taking notes on that. Thank you, Doctor.
Right. One of the other things that I do, Merlin, that I'll share with you, I have a slide that says DEIB practitioners recognize that the workplace challenges everyone. Because what I sort of talk about, the greatest educators educate to the individual learners. I believe that the greatest practitioners of this work recognize that the organization consists of many different groups and individuals. And ultimately, our job is to customize our solutions to meet the needs of those various groups. So one of the ways that this work has changed is back when our fathers and your mother were really leading this work, we were really segmented it into marginalized and sort of historically disadvantaged groups. And that was our target. I believe that we need to expand our borders, our boundaries, to recognize that even the C-suite has its own challenges. Sure. I created a model called the DEI, the Diversity Oz principle. Because of the Wizard of Oz, Dorothy, the Tin Men, they were all going to Oz to find the wizard so the wizard could solve all their problems. They get to Oz, they find the wizard, they realize he's a little short, bald man with no power, and they're gonna have to figure out their own problems.
Hey, wait a minute.
Yeah. And so that's what we see in corporate America, is that we're all lined up outside the C-suite's doors, waiting for the doors to open so we can say, solve all our problems. They don't have any answers. And a lot of times they're under their own stresses. I learned that 72% of the C-suite fear being fired. 70% are thinking about doing something else because they're losing their significant other, their kids. 80% are getting counseling from robots because they don't want people to know what they're up against. So I'm saying to you, with all of your clients, if you're not already doing that, think about your borders as bigger and wider. Because I know your mother and father both knew this, is that if you fix systems that relate to marginalized people, you're actually going to make things better for the dominant culture as well. Lean into that. We've all got to lean into that, because as we create healthier C-suites, then we create a greater potential for them to embrace the work that needs to be done for people that are marginalized.
I love that, Eric. One of the things we believe is if you build a system structure that centers the needs of the most marginalized people, you will create an environment, to your point, Eric, where everyone benefits.
That's fantastic. Fantastic. And I know we only have a few more moments, but wanted to ask you to share with us and our audience. And our community, Merlin, is across the U.S., if not in other countries. But we regularly have folks who are listening in and chiming in from the West Coast, from our southern region, obviously in the Midwest and East and up north. How might people get in touch with you and your solutions? Not just you, but the company. How might they get in touch with you?
Thank you, Tommy. The name is Pope Consulting. www.popeconsulting.com is the best way to check us out.
Yes, indeed.
Excellent.
Yes, indeed.
Well, I want to tell you how proud I am of you. I've watched you grow, man, and you just sound fabulous today. You are a wonderful blend of both of your parents. And I love it because I think that your generation also can take this to the next level. If you're not already thinking in the spaces of sort of content creation i.e., movies and things like that, I think that you ought to be considering all those things, man, because those are the spaces that we have to occupy. We've got to find ways to get the great work that you're doing within corporations and organizations into the mainstream as well. And I want to encourage that, and want to also extend my hand to say, if you ever want to just, chop it up and meet and talk about strategy and things like that, both I and Tommy. Yeah, both I and Tommy are both wide open, man.
Yes, I would love to continue conversations with you all. I'm trying to grow as a leader and in this space, and I would benefit greatly from continued conversations with the both of you. That would be amazing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Tommy, why don't you close us out, my friend?
Again, we want to thank our audience for joining us today. On this Saturday, we've had a fabulous conversation with a leader, not only in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion, but just a leader in the community, in his respective family. And I think there are other generations that are going to be watching this brother do his thing, and therefore he's a leader amongst leaders. Mr. Merlin Pope III, Pope Consulting, we'd like to invite you all back at same bat channel, same bat time next week on Diversity Conversations. Thank you for joining us. Please enjoy the day. Be blessed.
Take care.
Thanks for having me.
Take care.